You know, playing older games, it never fails to remind me that something's missing nowadays when I sit down and play a new game. And it's not all new games. There's a lot of games that come out and they're great. But it's kind of like when you play a good indie game. You usually refer to it as a gem, right? Well, now it feels like it's been reversed. Nowadays, it feels like all the indie games are just really good, and when you get a good AAA game, it's kind of like a gem. I've recently been playing a lot of Xbox 360 games, just going back and reliving that time in my life when things were just a lot more simpler. You know, that generation was actually the last time games just felt simple. It's kind of funny, really, when you look at my homepage on my Xbox, you'll see the most modern game I have installed is the Elden Ring. Everything else is just nothing but OG Xbox and Xbox 360. Some of them I'm really happy are backwards compatible, like Lost Odyssey. I never actually beat that game back in the day. I remember making it to like the third disc, and for some reason or another I just dropped it. But this year I am absolutely determined to finally make it through this massive game, because this was one of the best JRPGs I'd ever played at the time, and I really love how I can connect to the Xbox through remote play on the Steam Deck and just chill. This is a very slow burn type of game after all, probably why I never finished it. But I'm not a teenager anymore, I'm an old man, I'm more reserved, more patient for these kinds of games. Some games though, like Spec Ops The Line, a game that I completely missed out on during the Xbox 360, it takes a little bit more effort to obtain. This game is not backwards compatible. In fact, it's delisted on all digital stores. And I think it's because of licensing issues. You know, a movie can have a license for a song and it can live in perpetuity. But when a game does it, well, you know what happens. This happens. I couldn't get it on the Xbox, so I went to Steam to see if I could get it there instead. And it's no longer available. Guess I was sailing the seven seas once again. But that's okay, that's something I'm used to. I've grown quite familiar with navigating these waters. I can see why a lot of people probably missed this game, because there were a lot of military shooters back then. It felt like every 2 weeks we were getting another one. And me, like a lot of people, I was exhausted with the grays and the browns of the military scene. The only knowledge I really had of this game was through passing. People talking about their favorite games, and Spec Ops The Line, it came up a few times. It was one of those unique military shooters. I've even heard it called a psychological horror game. So I always had this one on my radar, but I never actually pulled the trigger on it. So when I finally got this game and it was up and running, I was excited to experience it, nearly blind to finally see what all the fuss was about. The game throws you straight into the action with one of those on-rails gunner sections. Then you go through the beginning, you know, just this third-person cover-based style shooting at enemies, and at first, I was just kind of going through the motions. It felt like one of those military shooters where you just turn your brain off and shoot the bad guys. Don't get me wrong, those games are really fun, but I was waiting to find out why this game was so unique and beloved by all of its fans. For the first hour or so, I kinda seen where people were coming from. You're on this rescue mission and things go south. You find yourself against American soldiers and you're no longer just shooting the bad guys. But it wasn't until I made it to that white phosphorus section. And I promise I won't spoil it, but this game completely changed my thoughts afterwards. That shit genuinely shook me to my core. This game wasn't just edgy for the purpose of being edgy. It had way darker undertones to it. It was a game that wasn't afraid to tell a story. It's a game that's not afraid to go there. It's that unreliable narrator. It's a game that makes you feel. That's something I rarely get from modern games. I don't get that feel. So many times I'll be sitting there with my brain on autopilot just grinding away. I miss when games made you feel something. Spec Ops The Line isn't anything special in terms of its gameplay. It just kind of feels like a repetitive, generic Gears clone. But all that melted away when it stopped me in my tracks and made me feel something. The last time I experienced that unreliable narrator in a game this good was BioShock. For fuck's sakes, why can't we go back to that? Back to when games used to be more than just the medium. Nowadays, games are just so steeped in politics, and yeah, this game has politics too, but it's the good kind of politics. It's the type of politics that reflects on the human condition. Not the type of politics where, what's that meme about HR being in the room? You know the one I'm talking about. Nowadays, games are afraid to be edgy, afraid to be offensive. All those edges, they've been sanded down. They're smooth now, they're soft. They can't be anything that has an opinion, a real opinion. They can't just be a piece of art. Nowadays, games have the complexity of a deep narrative, but it's more like a drama TV show. And it shows you all of its cards too. It's always spoiling what's next, what's around the corner. If I always know what's going to happen next, I'm not going to be interested in the story. I'm not going to be interested in the world building. I'm just going to turn my brain off. Spec Ops The Line is a special game, and you know when a game is special because when you're away from it, you're still thinking about it. Your massive backlog, it's probably not because you have disposable money now and you're irresponsible with it. It's most likely that these games just aren't keeping your attention. They're not grabbing you. They're not hooking you into their worlds. Modern gaming just has something missing now, and it's something that we used to have in abundance. Authenticity. I recently got my Nintendo Switch Joy-Cons to work with the Steam Deck, so I've been playing a lot of my favorite Wii games on Dolphin. One of those games is Super Mario Galaxy, a game that Nintendo technically gave us on Switch, but they dialed the FOMO up to 11 because you only had a limited time to play this game with that collection bundle or whatever it was. I asked a question once upon a time in one of my videos, is Nintendo losing their creativity? And oh boy, it stirred up some drama with the Nintendo community. They really did not like my opinions. Anyways, I never really appreciated the Joy-Cons. They never really went very far with them, not like the Wiimote and the Nunchuck. Galaxy has such a variety of unique mini-games and gameplay mechanics tied to the Wiimote, it just oozes with creativity. And replaying this game for the first time in a decade? It's been some of the most fun I've had all year messing around on the Steam Deck. There's this one level that kind of reminds me of Super Monkey Ball. You have to jump on this ball and roll it around this level, and you have to hold the Joy-Con upwards and slightly tilt it around, trying not to fall off the ledges. And I honestly forgot about a lot of these mini games. It's just pure joy. And going back to games just being simple. Games making you feel something. That main hub level, that theme song, that da 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 da. Oh my god. It just fills me with so much nostalgia. I have this swelling emotional feeling whenever I hear it. I swear, nobody makes video game music like Nintendo used to. 9 times out of 10, you watch like a video game essay or something and it won't even be Nintendo related. And there's still probably some Nintendo song in the background. Even with games I've never even played before, I can just go back to that era and they make me feel something. And really, that's what I want now. I just want to feel something, feel anything. Sometimes it's complete apathy. And I know why. It's because deep down I can see that it's not authentic. The people that are making these games, it's like they have no passion. The people publishing the game, the investors shoehorning in their greedy monetization, they don't care about the video games. Not like people used to care about video games back in the day. Even video game companies back in the day, they weren't just these big wigs or these corporate suits. They were gamers just like us. I remember these companies back then, they had this down with the system type of vibe to them. It's kind of crazy looking back now, but I don't know. I just wanted to talk about this and share with you guys that gaming just feels different. Whenever I play these older games, it just reminds me of what's missing nowadays. Authenticity.